it going, Dora? How are you doing these days?
I'm doing well, Jen. How are you?
Yeah, doing really good. It's interesting. I don't know about you, but this comes back over and over, I guess, naturally, because we are human beings, but the whole idea of emotions, and I was thinking about this because we were having a gathering, and it had been a long time since we've had a gathering and that we are actually hosting. And because our condo is quite small, we're planning to host three different gatherings because we can't just fit everybody in the space together. And I was starting to feel, I could feel it happening, that I was feeling a little bit stressed about the whole thing. And I was already feeling a little bit unwell. So I feel like when I feel unwell, the emotions even seem bigger. But what I'm grateful for is that, Mark is able to be very calming, and he could express that. He said something to the effect that, you're very stressed, and I'm feeling stressed. So, it's
Mark,
all
your partner?
yeah, Mark, my partner. So, you know, he recognized that I was feeling stressed, and he could feel it tangibly, even though I could feel it arising in myself too. And like just trying to be with it. But at that moment, I just couldn't do anything about it. Like I couldn't suddenly relax, because people were coming very soon. But I really appreciate that he was, self-regulated enough and aware enough to recognize that I was dysregulated and he was feeling dysregulated, very affected by me sort of running around like, oh, okay, I got to do this and that. And just him acknowledging it in a very calm way actually put me more at ease, and it kind of lightened the mood. And so it's an amazing thing when people are able to sort of be with their emotions and then express their emotion in a, sort of in a calm way, even though the emotion might not be calm. It's amazing how it can diffuse that emotion, So even though I still was feeling a little bit rushed and stressed, it just didn't take over as much. It didn't take up as much space, I think, or energy for both of us. Has that kind of happened for you when you're with, your family?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this is one of the things that come up for so many of us, because like you said, we're all humans, we all have emotions. And I think that oftentimes, this is one of the hardest things for us because we perceive that we cannot control how we feel, right? We feel like we're at the mercy of our emotions, and there are emotions that can make us feel really, joyful and pleasant, and all the good things that we like to experience. And then there are also then the opposite, right? The emotions that we don't enjoy, things that like anxiety and stress and anger and frustration and all of it. And when we have emotions arise for us, oftentimes we become so fused with them. We identify with them as though that this is the only thing that I can experience, or that this experience is living me. Like I have no choice and I'm trapped in feeling this way. And so if that's our perception around emotions, then it is really scary, because in that sense, we feel like we don't know what will come up. And then when things come up, we're kind of trapped and we're stuck, right? But from the perspective of integrative restoration, or iRest meditation, we learn to disidentify from these emotions. We learn to be an observer of these emotions, and just by acknowledging that, oh, these are emotions, we already, we basically disidentify from them. We start to recognize that, oh, I am not my emotions. I am the one who can see that I have emotions. And just that little step alone really can like shift our experience in a big way, and that the emotion might still be there. Just like you said, you might still be stressed or anxious, but by naming it and seeing it, there's, like you say, there's a sense of, oh, there's a sense of more calm, even as I'm still experiencing, or even as I still recognize that this emotion is here. And so I think that, yeah, for many of us, emotions is a tough one, and we start to create patterns so that we avoid feeling things we don't like to feel, thinking that's the solution. But as you know, that actually creates more fear and limitation in the way we interact and experience the world.
That's so true. I reflect back when I talk with some friends who are younger and, big emotions, especially around relationships, wanting to find love and, um, feeling really, that lack of love as well, when a relationship, a romantic relationship has ended. And I feel like, not that I figured it out, but I think after experiencing it for decades, like having had some big, like relationships that have ended, even friendships, actually, friendships that have ended, even from childhood, growing up, and then romantic relationships as well, running their course, right? And I feel like it might have changed a little bit differently as I got older, recognizing that it's okay to feel grief and feel sadness. Like you were saying, I think some people feel as though they need to get out of that sadness right away for whatever reason. But there's this recognition now that that's a natural feeling. Like when something has ended, feeling this deep sadness for however long it wants to be there is a natural expression, and it's okay. It's very natural to feel sad for something. And then also feeling when you're in love and that courtship sort of feeling, like that's also very natural. So all these emotions, however they arise and whenever they arise, understanding that they're naturally there. And sometimes there's a messenger, like maybe if you're in a relationship and there's just some kind of nagging feeling behind it, knowing that listen to it, that means something. There might be something there. And then the opposite too, maybe you're not in a relationship yet, and then noticing something arising, this like butterfly feeling, and maybe like there's something there. Because I have friends too who are saying that they're not very good at recognizing when maybe somebody's interested. So I know for me, it took me a long time to figure out what those feelings were like. If I was interested in somebody or if they were interested in me. I mean, when something was ending. So just being with all these different emotions, I think, we're able to see what the message is behind them. And we've really learned through iRest how to witness them all and disidentify from them so that we can give it space and really see what the meaning is behind there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, like, you're right in that we've been taught or we've been conditioned to think that certain emotions are better than others. Certain emotions we don't want to feel into, or we have to move away from. And it's, and so we don't give room, we don't give space to certain emotions for them to naturally move through. And all emotions are needed, otherwise we wouldn't have them, right? And so, when we only allow certain emotions to be felt and not others, we create our own kind of conflict within ourselves, because one emotion doesn't exist without its opposite. Everything that we experience in the world is relative. And so we only know sadness, or we only know joy because we know sadness, and vice versa, right? We know what something we know something is hot because we felt what cold is, and then all the in between, so that we can. It's the contrast. Um, it's the contrast to in relation to another thing that allows us to recognize and experience, have something to compare it with. And so when we don't allow sadness to be in our world, then we may not know this, but we actually don't feel into joy as much either. Like both opposites arise together. And so when we don't allow ourselves to fully feel into one, we also limit our experience of its opposite. And so, yeah, I think that I know you and I as teachers, we both try to bring this concept to our students, right? And to allow them to be okay to feel into the different emotions, that the different emotions are valid, and that we offer them a safe way to feel into them. So it's also not about, oh, I just got to feel everything, even though if it overwhelms me. But there's a way, there's a process for us to feel into all the different types of emotions at a pace that feels right for us.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love how the inner resource is such a good way. Once that's established, um, people might feel naturally, and the emotions might emerge and naturally, knowing that there is a safe space now and a safe way for them to feel these emotions that just kind of come up for themselves. And I think back to during my training, when we were I think people were open to feeling vulnerable, especially in the level 2 training for the integrative restoration. Um, and like as we're opening up to emotions, with strangers, it's amazing how, because you're in this protected space, using a protocol that we trust, and among, senior teachers that we know would be there if we needed them while we were facilitating a dyad, a one-on-one co-meditation dyad or a guided meditation, knowing that there was a great support system all around. It's amazing how vulnerable people were willing to be. And I remember even thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what's going to arise, because anything can arise because I'm so open to letting things arise. There was this concern on one side, like, wow, what's going to arise with a lot of strangers around me? And then on the other side, like, wow, I feel completely comfortable to allow whatever wants to unfold during this time to reveal itself. So it's such a beautiful practice to be able to use the iRest protocol for ourselves and for clients or for loved ones, even to investigate whatever emotions are, maybe under the surface.
Yeah, and everything is a messenger after all, right? So every emotion is really pointing us back to ourselves. If we seek to understand ourselves better, we can use everything as a messenger. And emotions is actually a really powerful messenger because it's something that's really felt. Um, strongly, right? Especially the negative or the perceived negative emotions are the ones that we keep avoiding. So if we're able to stop avoiding the things that we don't like and actually start to make space to look at them, mm, there's a lot of information there that tells us about ourselves, about where we might be stuck and the conditioned beliefs that we have that might be preventing us from growing. And so it's really interesting when we start to see emotions as messengers, as we actually take away the fear around it somewhat, instead of thinking that, oh, I am hopeless or helpless in certain emotions. You're like, oh, isn't this interesting that this is coming up for me? I wonder what the message is behind this. I wonder what I have to learn about this. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful practice.
It's interesting too, because I'm thinking back to, it was a summit or some research that I was listening to and related to how emotions are chemistry as well. So, especially for maybe some people who might have some challenging um, mental health challenges, sometimes it points towards, that there's an imbalance from my understanding. So sometimes when something's imbalanced in their hormones or in their brain, even, my understanding is that sometimes certain kinds of emotions can arise, very strong emotions can arise. And that also can be a pointer that there's, especially if you already know that this person has mental health challenges, that maybe that needs to be addressed. Maybe their medications need to be addressed or work with their social worker. So it's such an interesting thing how emotions really can point for so many different ways, physically, as well as what's happening in life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, if we always come from the perspective of curiosity, instead of judgment, then we can be open to so many messengers that come to us, and we're not afraid to ask the questions. Well, is it to do with my health? Is there something that I need to work on in terms of my health because that might be affecting my emotions? Are there beliefs that I have about myself that may be relating to emotions? how am I experiencing my emotions? So there are so many different layers. It's a complex area. Um, but again, like I think it all just comes down to that curiosity when everything that comes up for you could be of interest, could be, oh, this is something I can learn about myself in, any number of ways. Then there's less fear around actually looking into the various areas. And when we do that, I think that the more we can understand ourselves, whether it be physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, um, we start to take things sort of less personally. It's not so much about, oh, I am this and that and that and that. It's actually like, no, I am none of the things that are coming up for me. I'm not my beliefs, my thoughts, my emotions, my sensations. I have those things arise. I experience those things, but yet I also understand that, I don't have to attach to these things as though I am those things. And I think it's just that realization, it sounds like it's a really simple one, but it's a really profound one.
You make me think of, not only for ourselves, but it's a great starting point, of course, right? If we can um, just witness ourselves. But even as a teacher, there was another summit I had attended to, and she was just saying how sort of that curiosity piece, as students come in, being curious, not taking it personally. We don't know what a child might have gone through that morning. There might have been, all these different requests or difficulties in their family. So by the time they walk into class, they're already at their last straw. So when you just ask for one more thing, like just one more thing, like even in the nicest voice, just asking them to sit down, and that child kind of like, I don't want to sit down, and this whole thing happens. It's not personal. It's not that there's no good or bad. It just might be that, this was the last straw for them. And it really takes someone who can be curious about why, the student is coming in like this, and being curious about the situation and not taking it personally, that they can address like, okay, obviously something, they're dysregulated at this moment, so they're not going to be able to learn or to work with anybody. So maybe they need a moment. And so whatever that moment looks like, or whatever that strategy, hopefully that the teacher has already implemented and started implementing, like maybe the inner resource or breath practices to be supportive, any physical movements. The child might even be able to recognize like, oh, okay, I'm freaking out right now and I'm not ready to sit down. And they might even be able to start to learn what it looks like when they're dysregulated. So yes, with curiosity, for sure, I think it really changes our relationship with ourselves and then with other people around us, not taking whatever emotion arises personally. Yeah.
That is actually so important. Like when we recognize that for ourselves, the way we interact with everyone changes. And I don't know about you, but I think that most of my students, when they have conflict, is really within relationships, right? So if we can start to change the way we are in relationships, I think most of our issues may go away. Just, when we start to actually be a little bit more curious and judgmental, when we start to take things a little less personally and actually think that, oh, this person, even though they might be saying that they're mad at me, they may not be. Right? It might be something else, but like you say, I'm just there at the right place at the right time for them to express whatever they need to. Or like you say, that last straw that, things have been accumulating, and then it's that last thing, and then it feels like it's directed at you. But it may have really not much to do with you. Like it may just be the way that they express it in that moment, but it really is coming from their experiences, their perception of their situation right now, and their, where they are at in terms of their stress and health and everything else. So yeah.
So, what's some advice then that maybe people can do sort of as they're meeting each emotion, as we will throughout our lifetime? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I think that, while we talk about witnessing or being aware of the different emotions that come up is definitely um, a great practice for that. I often um, hear students uh, say how difficult it is to do that because I think there's some level of fear. Sure, it's easy to witness happy emotions, right? When we're feeling pleasantness in our body and joy, and those are things that we love to stay there, so no problems there. But oftentimes when we are dealing with emotions that as an issue, it's usually the emotions that we don't like feeling. And who wants to feel into things that make us feel uncomfortable, right? So it's really difficult to observe something that makes us feel uncomfortable, especially when we've been conditioned to stay away from them for like, maybe all our lives. And so I think that the inner resource practice is going to be a really wonderful place to start for us to learn that there's actually something within us where, that can help to ground us. There's a sacred space within us, a sense of that gives us a sense of safety and security and just feeling at ease in our bodies. And so I would really recommend cultivating an inner resource practice as a starting point and start to build trust with the body that, hey, if anything shows up for me that I'm not ready for, I can come back to my safe space. And then from that safe space, and I might then be more able to observe what's arising.
That sounds
What
wonderful.
about you? What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, definitely the inner resource is a great practice. And, you were referring to the body. I guess, if people have been sort of following along and, starting with the Sankalpa, that the intention and heartfelt desire and our inner resource practice that we offered earlier and feeling into the body and breath, then maybe with the emotions, people are starting to recognize when an emotion might be challenging in the body and they might feel that tension. And then when maybe something is a preferred emotion and they feel that maybe there's a lightness or something in the body that feels comfortable for them. And so, with that curiosity that we were talking about, I guess I would suggest if you're already starting to feel into the body, continue to be curious. So, as big emotions are happening, and as you're starting to notice more and more life's messengers, being able to just take that one little step back to witness with curiosity your own emotions that are arising and how it feels in the body. And the same thing as when emotions are presenting themselves in people around you and what you're noticing in the body. And I feel like when you do that experimentation of noticing, it brings a little bit of space so that you're not taking it personally anymore. You're actually being very curious, like, oh, there's some tension there. Interesting. Okay. I feel there's some tension there. And you can just, like you said, give it space to be seen and heard. And then you might really be able to see what that message is. Like maybe you need a pause. Maybe you're tired, right? Or maybe they need a pause and they're tired. So just feeling it in the body as these different emotions continue to arise throughout life, you can really be curious and experiment moment to moment. So hopefully people will let us know how their practice goes with using the inner resource to feel grounded and then feeling into emotions to the degree that feels possible. So I'll see you again next time, Dora.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jen.